Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kashin, and I've been practicing here for 24 years. I grew up in Denmark, but I was born in South Korea. So I received the Jukai about 3 years of my residency practicing here. And usually the teacher sends maybe the students is ready to further the practice and go deeper into it and commit. So I got the name Kashin from my teacher, which means true flower. And but I actually had that name the whole time. It's true, my Korean name is Hwajin. And somebody gave me in Korea, maybe in an orphanage where I lived for 7 years, or maybe my actual biological parents. I don't know. I was found on the street, and when I was back in Korea and I said my name is Kashin, there was always a little pause. And they said, "Oh, that's a beautiful name." And I never knew why until my teacher gave me back my name. And I told Kwong-roshi in my first Dokusan that I went to Korea to look for my mother, and I didn't find her. And then he looked at me. "Yes, you did. Your mother is Kanseon." So yesterday, I had a really hard time. Because my husband and I, we are going through difficulties with our son, who's 17 years old. And I didn't know what to do. So I decided to go out to the garden and pick some peonies and put them and offer them to the altar. And the peonies on the altar, they're also called the land lotus. And I think we appreciate them because when we look at it quietly for a little while, then we sense the short life they live, and life is very fleeting. So it must be around this time we visited the Korean scholar Hee-jin Kim, who recently passed away. We visited him during the pandemic at his home in Walnut Creek when the peonies were in bloom. I remember we brought him and his wife Jung-sun a big bunch of the peonies with a box of oranges. We have lunch together, and the daughter Grace, Pearl wasn't there, not the son, but Kwong-roshi was there, and Shinko, and Hojo-san and me and Ajo. So Hee-jin Kim passed away peacefully at his home just 16 days ago. He's with us. He's on his journey in the bottle. And I try as much I can to dedicate my sitting to him, as well as this talk. So he became 98 years old. He was a professor emeritus of religious study at the University of Oregon and the author of Ehe Dogen, Mystical Realist, this very interesting book. But I wouldn't say it's a beginner's book. It's very difficult, way beyond me. But I did read it and try to let it seep in somehow. It's an interesting book because it's about thinking. And we always told not to think. But this one, you can think as much you want. And but do it 100%, you know. It's very, yeah. And he also have written numerous other books on Dogen and his Zazen, his Zen, his thinking. So back to the day when we visited him, he must have been 94. I remember him saying many times, Dogen saved my life. I was able to find a piece in an old newsletter that I happened to write about that visit. So Hee-jin Kim rose with excitement from his chair and disappeared down the hallway towards his study, where he still spends hours every day. He came back with a very worn copy of the first edition of Mystical Realist, stuffed with notes and inserts so thick that he had to have 2 large elastic bands to hold it together. You see, he said, sitting down, there needs to be many corrections, so it's more contemporary. The wording is too old, he said animatedly. Yeah, he gave an example. The title of chapter 4, The Religion and Metaphysics of Buddha Dharma. No, it should not say metaphysics. Maybe philosophy is better. Or, and just see below, it says two strains of Mahayana idealism. I would like to change it. Maybe to two strands in the Mahayana view of mind only. He smiled, looking at the book in his hand. Well, he nodded, this could be my final edition. Maybe it's okay if it does not happen, and it's just for myself. It's okay. If I die and it does not happen. Let's have some dessert and some coffee. And he smiled. So while we were having fruit tart and coffee, he said, the idea of Makpo, which is the degenerating age of Dharma, means it's disappearing. It might not necessarily be true. I remember Dogen said, every age is the right Dharma. It is not imitated Dharma. We should never imitate. If you do not seek enlightenment, Dogen continues, here and now, on the pretext of being the latter day of the Dharma, in what birth are you to attain it? Today's life does not guarantee tomorrow's. The possibility and danger of dying are always at hand. Now, it's some years ago, I was able to read this book, and I don't remember anything of it. But open a page, and I thought maybe this is quite good. And it's on the very beginning of the book. It's actually the foreword, and it's by Taiken Den Leighton. Although current meditators may appreciate the therapeutic and stress-reducing side effects of Zen, for Dogen, Hee-Jin Kim clarifies that Zazen is primarily a creative mode of expression instead of a means to some personal benefit. In one of the Hoko, the Dharma words, in Dogen's extensive record, Ehe Koroku, Dogen speaks of the oneness not only of practice enlightenment, but the deep oneness of practice enlightenment expression. Just as Zazen is not waiting for enlightenment, expounding the Dharma, the expression of awareness does not wait only until enlightenment's aftermath. There is no practice enlightenment that is not expressed. There is no practice expression of Buddha Dharma that is not informed with enlightenment. There is no enlightenment expression unless it is practiced. We might say that Dogen's Zazen is a performance art in which its upright posture and every gesture expresses one's present enlightenment practice. Hichin Kim explicitates how such creative practice expression is not a matter of some refined understanding, but of deep trust in the activity of Buddha nature. Zazen only cannot be fully understood apart from consideration of faith, maybe considerable faith. So last year in the fall, I went through 7-day Shiho transmission with my teacher Kwong-roshi and Hojo-san, who was the ceremony master. So the Shiho consists of something called Keigyo, which is 6-day strenuous preparation and schedule leading up to the peak of the 7th day, which goes from midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning, going through a meticulous step-by-step ceremony called Dempo, which is the Dharma transmission. And it happens behind an enclosed red curtain in the dim, almost dark light here, right here in the Sendo. So the student receive a keiho, which are the precepts, once again, and sanmotsu is 3 items, which are the kechimyaku, the lineage chart, the daiji, the essential teaching of the Soto Shu, and the shiho, the blood lineage that the student only can receive directly from his or her teacher. The Dempo, Dharma transmission, is an extremely important part of the Soto Shu lifeline. A ceremony that will be transmitted forever, in which the disciple inherit the Hoto, the Dharma lamp that the Buddhas and ancestors have correctly transmitted from beginning this time. So in 2018, I went training on the fantastic Aoyama-roshi at her nunnery. It's called Aichi. Senmon is a training temple, and it's located in Nagoya, Japan, and it's only for nuns, and the only one left. Aoyama-roshi made sure that we were invited to observe and take notes of a Shiho ceremony, Tempo ceremony, and I wrote in my notes, day 117, August 3rd, on a very, very hot and unbearable humid day. Junke-san is her last day of her Shiho ceremony, and we are observing and taking notes of the different parts of the Shiho ceremony. Usually it's done very privately and secretly, but Aoyama-roshi wants us to see it and be familiar with it for the Shiho ceremony not to get lost and die out. So my own Shiho ceremony, and I did notice I was very reluctant to talk about it. And I didn't like to talk about it. Not because to be held secret or discreet, but I noticed it made me very uncomfortable. Just even the thoughts of it. It's like, how on earth did I get into the Shiho ceremony? I don't even want to. Did I really say yes? And my goodness, what have I done? And well, no matter what kind of emotion we will have about it, Roshi said to me, now the work has to start. So even though it was just in the fall, it seems to me now that it was all a dream. But I remember there were endless prostrations between me and Roshi. Yes, endless prostrations, and confirming by responding, yes, I will. 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 Over and over. and then each one with a full prostration. To prostrate is a very serious practice, as Suzuki Roshi tells us and Kwong-roshi tells us over and over. So bowing is like letting go of this old self, this small self. When we are truly bowing, we should be very pleased because we're invoking the Buddha nature within ourselves to come alive, not to forget. That's why when we bow to each other, we acknowledge each other's Buddha nature, and we remind each other. It seems like when I bow, something inside really wants me to do it. There's something by just that activity alone that gives me peace. That somehow feels like satisfied my innermost desires. I remember Kwong-roshi said, like, when things are intimidating, when we're intimidated, it might be that we are fearing meeting ourselves. Absurdly, yeah, to meet our true self. Because that means that we have to change. I even have a very wonderful shishiki. It's like a square scroll, considered less formal, by Aoyama-roshi, that says something like, if you want the world to change, you also have to change. So it's really true when you go through a ceremony, the ceremony makes you and not the other way around. I was keep on being worried about how come I didn't feel anything. But somewhere I managed to, that I felt there was a sudden change within me though. I realized that the ceremony, had done me somehow, shaping something into being within me. We always expect things to be special. but it's just an idea. What you find is something ordinary, and it's actually always going on. We always want to create something special, special feeling especially, but once Roshi said, the transmission is not just your trip. It's not just yourself, but it's the bigger self that you are surrendering to and operating from. As you, little by little, make a very serious commitment to not to give up on yourself and the practice. This story, it always strikes me, and I just love it. I don't know why. But one of the most famous tales of the Buddha was that he stood before the large assembly of monks. I don't know, 2,566. Roshi seems always to know the exact number. I'm not good at math. But it's actually right now holding up a flower. I better read. Stood before the large assembly of monks, holding up a flower, but otherwise remained silent. None of the monks understood this gesture, except Mahakasyapa, a senior disciple who simply smiled at the Buddha. Seeing this, the Buddha said, I have the true Dharma eye, the marvelous mind of Nirvana, the true form of the formless, the subtle Dharma gate that does not rely on words or letters. It is a special transmission outside the scriptures. This I entrust to Mahakasyapa. In Zen tradition, this special transmission outside the scriptures marked the beginning of master to disciple transmission that continues to this day. So back to the my Shiho transmission in the fall. It was 7 very intensive days. And among other things, I had to write in calligraphy the names of the Buddhas and ancestors many times. So starting with the Shakyamuni Buddha, followed by 92 generations, and then returning back to Shakyamuni Buddha, and which is back to a circle that's empty, right, on the calligraphy itself. So the writing document is on a 3 very large silk-like rice paper, right? And on it there's a blossom of the plum, and is embossed, into the paper itself, right? And it's scattered. The paper is quite, the document is quite long, I don't know, maybe at least the height of the peony, and then down to the ground, 3 of those, about this wide. And I couldn't make any mistakes, because you only get 3 pieces sent from Japan. Okay. So with a very thin brush, I have to copy in kanji these Chinese characters, which I don't know. All the names of our great ancestors. So I remember one day, it was coming closer to the midnight transmission part of the ceremony. I was working on the last document at the Roshi's beautiful studio by his house, the Inryu, and I was lucky it wasn't neither too hot or too cold. And with the constructed like a light I could see through, so I could trace the characters and the brushes and everything. And I was working on the last document, which is that red circle. No, actually it's another one, but anyways, it's even larger circle, and in red I have to make, a freestyle, like a line that goes in and out like this all the way around, so it makes a circle. And you can imagine it's quite difficult, because I have to fit 92 generations on that red bloodline. And so I got that, and started out with Shakyamuni Buddha, Mahakashyapa, and so forth. And I continue, but then I find out, oh my goodness, I made a mistake. The order of the ancestors was wrong. So I was really devastated, and unhappy, because things was going pretty good so far. And so I felt there was no other way to fix the problem by making the mistake 100%. So I calmly proceeded writing towards the end of the circle with my wrong order of ancestors, and I had to accept that I messed up, and that's just how it is. So when I was almost done. I checked the sequence again, and to my surprise, I found out that it was actually okay. There was no mistake, only in my mind. So about a month ago, a month and a half ago, I think, in March, I went with Hojo-san and Eijo, our 17-year-old son Eijo, to a pilgrimage to Japan as a part of my suisei ceremony to pay respect to our ancestors and founders of the lineage, our lineage. So actually this suisei ceremony in Japan is the last component of that shiho ceremony. And it's important because that ceremony seals the whole thing. So the suisei ceremony with the student now as a priest have to go through a kind of like enactment of one, they call it one night abbot. So you have to be the abbot of the temple, right? So which means you arrive in the afternoon to the head temple. That was Aichi. So it was indeed very, very intimidating. And stay overnight in the morning, do zazen like here, same morning as here, and then officiate the service, and then leave around 9. So it must be done within 2 years in those 2 head temples, which is Aichi, Dogen Senji's temple, and Sojiji, Keisan Senji's temple. And it wasn't just strenuous, but you know, when you do something important, I think it's very common to feel that having the wish that you were kind of on top on things, meaning that you know, you feel like your practice is good, that you're very gathered and ready, and so you can do this important thing. But it was completely opposite. I feel like I have to. I was very insecure about the whole thing, and I wrote these notes when I came home, trying to digest it all. So what I first of all learned from the suisei ceremony was the feeling I had after returning home. Though strangely, unusually exhausted, I felt as if I was capable of almost anything, Not that I have done anything great and now, got courageous. I was just reflecting on the meaning of just doing something, whether capable or not. Remembering that's in the trying that makes the difference. Every day, try to practice the Dharma in all the small and difficult ways. I felt large inside, but at the same time very small. Just standing there face to face to our ancestors. And I must have read a small, for different reasons, like when I was standing in front of the main altar at the Sojiji, so that's Keisan Senji's temple. He's the said to be the father of our lineage, Soto lineage. No, it's the other way. It's the Dogen is the father, so it's more like in the absolute, where Keisan is the mother, meaning, getting to the dishes and everyday, activities. Of course, the father does that too, but he wrote down all the temple rules, which is not rules. It is actually how you have a chance to express your true nature. So I was standing there. There are 1,000 tatami mats in that hatto, the Dharma hall at Sojiji. And one tatami is 6 by 3. So 1,000 of those. So it's a very big hall. I remember first time when we went there, or was the second time when Hojo-san had his suisei ceremony, and I could relax because I was just the guest, observer, just watching. And for the Keigyo, the chant leader, there was like a microphone coming up through the floor. And because the hall was so large, naturally you feel very small. But there had to be something else that I can't quite name. I know already, but there's no need to say it. And part of the suisei ceremony, so we're still at Heichi, so you do the Sojiji. So you do the same ceremony at Heichi and then at Sojiji. And in my case, there was only 3 or 4 days in between. Most often you just take one place, 1 year, and then wait and finish later. So at Aichi, there was one other monk, young, I think from a family temple a little south of Japan. And to my relief, we do it together, right? So anybody who does the suisei ceremony, if there was 10, then there would be 10 up front, right? And so it was two of us, and we could help each other, right? And but at the Sojichi, to my horror, I find out it was only me. But without thinking too much, you know, actually the form, just doing the form, I think saved me or made me get through it. But there was a part when you go to the mausoleum at Sojichi, is just behind the main altar, so in the Dharma hall, so the 10 tatami mat hall, and the mausoleum is up very high behind the altar, and the Keisan Senji, the ancestors, like it's behind a curtain, you know, and so you can't, you know, for sure when you stand in front of the altar you can't see. But to go to the mausoleum, there's a very strict form. Form I'm very familiar with. They're very different from tea ceremony. So you have to, before you put on your, go on to the first step that goes to the mausoleum, you have to bow to a roshi whose sole job is taking care of and guard the mausoleum, and everything goes on correctly. And then I bow, and so I'm facing out. So the altar is actually the actual altar in front, and the mausoleum or the step to the mausoleum is behind it. So I'm actually, you imagine I'm you know, there in front of Dogen, and that at all times I have to be in Gasho and face out, and then take one step sideways without looking down. And so one step, and 2, 3, and 4, and then you're allowed to turn around and walk up as you usually would on steps. And you come up there, and then there's like in front of the altar, you know, the Roshi's bowing mat, and then I bring out my saku and do one prostration in the front, and then, no, I'm sorry, 3 prostrations to the front, and then pick up my saku, turn to the left side, and do 1 prostration, and then turn to the right side and do 1 prostrations to the ancestors prior and after Keisan Senji. And then back to 3 prostrations. And then there are steps going to the other side, coming down from the mausoleum. And that happens exactly the same way as I ascended the steps. And usually you wouldn't have your back to the altar in veneration of the, you know, of the Buddha. But in this case, I noticed it was a kind of foreign feeling to have the back to the altar of the mausoleum as I was going up and down. But then I thought, no, actually, my back is the front. And I wrote, you have to trust that your feet knows. So never have done anything like this before. I was very nervous, but maybe not necessarily consciously, but I called on my good friend, which is called nervousness. So nervousness and me, we did it together. Don't think and just bow, as I have learned. I think that really made me come through it. So trust yourself. Yeah, profoundly trust in yourself. You must step forward under your own authority. There has to be a discomfort many times, but it's all an intimate part. I found out it was intimate part of me, and it is for each one of us. As we've been told over and over, nothing is outside of ourselves. And cultivate, I wish to cultivate that brings the, not just the belief, but the thought of the spirit of just doing despite or in spite of not knowing. Thank you.